Hey guys, Master Thorn here with Edge Martial Arts in Stillwater, Minnesota, and we're talking this month about self-discipline. This is week 3, so if you're jumping into here, I want you to go back and watch the previous videos first. So if you're jumping in late, you get to just watch them all in a row. If you're jumping in week to week, that's the better way to approach this because I'm going to give you those week-to-week challenges. Remember the first week, talking about what self-discipline is, doing what you're supposed to, not what you want to, finding a simple activity that you can do for the whole month, whether it take a couple seconds or a couple minutes, maybe picking yourself up off the floor from the night before when you wake up, or making your bed, or brushing your teeth, or whatever it is, to teach yourself that you can do this. I want it to be something simple and not out of the way, so that you just have an activity that you're supposed to do that you don't want to, but you're doing it to show that you can. Week 1 was that. Week 2 was kind of talking about looking back and finding something either actively or in the past that you have done, that's self-discipline, something you didn't want to, but you did it. I want you to have attached the motivation behind it. Why did you do it? Why did you have the self-discipline? And what was the benefit of getting it done? In week 3, I want to talk about what happens if we don't have self-discipline, right? I want you to think back. It's not a fun way to do it, but I want you to think back about something that maybe in the past you were supposed to do, but you didn't have enough self-discipline to do it. What was the negative result of that happening? Maybe you didn't have the discipline to do your homework, right? And you ended up getting bad grades, and that held you back from doing something else because you weren't getting the grades you're supposed to get. Maybe you didn't have the self-discipline to get up early in the morning and get yourself ready to get to work on time, and you didn't get a promotion, or you got fired, right? Or maybe you're not getting the hours or the raises you feel like you should be getting at work, and probably because of some of our performance issues, right? Or whatever it might be, right? Maybe you don't have the discipline to pick up your food at the end of the night and you leave it out and there's ants in your house, right? So I want you to figure out the downside of not having self-discipline. I don't need it to be something very drastic. We're not trying to scare you into doing self-discipline, but the goal is that I want you to start to now think about maybe some activities in life you could go back and revisit and start to do the self-discipline on. Or start to look at some of the things in the past that happened and realize that it was the lack of self-discipline of not getting something done. Like, I flunked math. I didn't. I love math. But let's say you flunked math. It's not because it was hard. It's because you didn't have the discipline to put in the right amount of effort, which is other videos, into that class. And if some people, if it's easy, maybe it's 10 minutes a day for them. Maybe it's no extra work besides school, right? And if it's hard for you, it might be an hour, hour and a half. But that's the discipline where you tell yourself, I have to do this studying until it works. You know, if you're self-employed, you're gonna have to work until you make it work. Like, you can't just work 10 minutes and go, man, I hope all the business comes in, right? So I want you to start to look back and say, maybe what failure happened, or something that maybe didn't have the best result. And then let's look back and see, what activities could I have done that I didn't have the discipline to follow through? I started and didn't finish, right? So this week, before I see you again next week, before we talk about this next week, I want you to figure out maybe a place in life that you have lacked self-discipline, and what is the result. And now start to also look at, what was your motivation? What was the motivation? Like, let's look back at math. You flunked math, right? Like I said, I love math, but everyone's a little bit different. So you flunked math. Ultimately, it's because you didn't have the self-discipline to do the work, and for you, it might have been a lot of work, right? But you didn't have the discipline to do it, okay? And maybe it's hard for you. So let's say you didn't do the discipline of asking for help or doing the help, right? Okay, and you flunked it. So what was the motivation for you to want to have the self-discipline to read or do the problems or whatever it was to pass math? Maybe there was no motivation. Maybe there's no motivation attached to it. Maybe the motivation wasn't the good grades will help me get into college and not have to repeat high school math when I'm in college, which is a credit I have to pay for. Or maybe the motivation wasn't, this is going to help me later on in life so that when math kind of problems come up and doing something in the house, I can figure out the answer to this without having to Google it all the time, right? Or maybe a different subject, right? Maybe it's English. Maybe you hate English. And the motivation wasn't, hey, if I'm good at English, I'll be able to actually type things up later that people don't mind reading, right? Because a lot of times at work, you're gonna have to type an email or a paper or something, or whatever it is you might be doing, writing something to someone. You don't want them looking at that and engaging their opinion about you based on how you're writing or typing or even texting this to them. So again, I want you to figure out, maybe was there a lack of motivation or understanding behind why the self-discipline on that project or that thing wasn't there. So think back, find something that did not work out, that had a negative result, figure out what the lacking discipline was there, what activity needed the discipline to happen, and then also figure out what would have been the motivation that would have helped driven that self-discipline, because sometimes we need the motivation to figure out why. Why am I having self-discipline? What is the ultimate benefit of doing this, right? Besides just repetition on having self-discipline. So again, I want you to practice this stuff till I see you next week, and then we'll talk a little bit more in week 4.